Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher, from our BizVision studios in the UK. You're watching the BVTV Today's Leader channel. Now, I'm an avid and voracious reader, but often just to prepare myself for an interview with an author. But a confession, rarely do I take time to absorb my reading. I just hope it'll lodge in my brain. Well, today, I'm going to introduce you to an author of a book which I'm not only reading, but I'm reading it very slowly and digesting its excellent content. I've long been emphasizing in my executive coaching sessions that leaders need to get their ducks in a row. I hope that's an expression that you understand. Most times I have to explain what I mean by ducks in a row relevant to that particular business, say getting purpose, policies, compliance, finance, all in a row before bidding for a contract. But now there's a book that goes way beyond my basic in a row, ducks in a row, and delivers a leadership playbook on aligning your organization with your mission and your vision. And it's that book which I'm slowly reading and absorbing, and I want to introduce you to today. It's a book that has a message of the moment, a message for today's leaders in this altered world. So let's meet the CEO of Infinity Systems and the author of my bedstand book of the month called The Art of Alignment, a data-driven approach to lead aligned organizations. Welcome, Art Johnson. Hello, Art.
Malcolm, thank you for having me.
I'm sorry I took a bit longer that introduction there, but that was a particular. I just think it's a fabulous book, and I don't know where I'm going to get all my questions in on the time that we've got today before we have a change of government, a change of everything. There's so much there. It's exciting. It's a great book. Okay, now I'm delighted you're joining us here on Today's Leader, because inside this book are so many different ideas that really fit into today. They really do fit into today, and we'll discuss them as we go through. I'll be talking to you in three parts, Art. First part, I'll ask you to tell us about your thinking of the situation in businesses in this altered world. Are many out of alignment? And what's the consequence of that? In part two, we'll move to talking about your 9 pillars of alignment. And in part three, we'll talk about the benefits of implementing your alignment thinking, and importantly, how to measure those benefits. Art, just before we get into our three-part though, can you briefly introduce yourself to my viewers and listeners? Who is Art Johnson? What is alignment in a nutshell? And how did you get the sadly late but great Larry King to do that recommendation on the front of your book?
Well, again, thanks for having me, Malcolm. The quick storyline on myself, I grew up in Minnesota, went away to college, came back, started my career, moved up the ranks pretty quickly, took on some significant leadership roles. And what I kept finding out was the more responsibility I got, in other words, more people in my organization, more revenue responsibility, more states, more coverage, more stuff to do. I kept finding this disconnect between the work that we were doing at headquarters, and the farther we got away from headquarters, there seemed to be this significant disconnect or misalignment. So over the years, I kind of had been tinkering with instruments of measurement, from employee satisfaction to looking at things like employee engagement. And what I kept learning, Malcolm, was that employees were engaged, but they weren't always engaged in the right stuff.
Yeah.
So to the degree to where we could figure out what the disconnect was between this work that they were doing and the work that was required of them, it required this element, which you talked about earlier, called purpose. And so how do we find the real purpose in our work? And in doing that and working at the elbow of a number of PhDs, we came up with the term alignment. And at that point in time, began to measure organizational alignment. And the tool of measurement that we use is called orgometrics. And my book, The Art of Alignment, specifically lays out the elements that you talked about, those 9 pillars. And we're really excited about the ability to measure something that historically has not been measured.
I find it so fascinating because we had a gentleman, sadly dead now, but Sir John Harvey Jones in the UK, who came out with one of the first UK business shows called Troubleshooter. And I was talking to him one day, and he said, I know when I go into a business that from the rawest recruit, that's possibly somebody sweeping the floor, right up to the guy at the top, if they're conveying the same message, then they're all in a line. He didn't use the word alignment, but in a line. But it's always resonated with me, that thinking.
That's interesting. When we talk about this concept of alignment, we notice how numbers cascade. So in other words, we look at a leadership team, those that report directly to the CEO, the president, the superintendent, the fire chief, whoever it is, right? And those that are most close to the leader, in other words, direct reports, tend to be the most aligned. But what we're finding is about 73% of those are aligned, which means 27% are not.
Yeah.
And what we know is that misalignment begets more misalignment. And as it cascades down into the organization, it creates some real challenges.
Yeah. It's almost like Maslow's hierarchy, but with the guy at the top, the CEO at the top there, and he's only interested in the profit and survival of the organization. But when you go down to the guy on the dock, he's not really interested in the business, is he?
No, not so much. And so part of the leader's role, Malcolm, is to sell the vision. It's to buy in throughout the entire organization of the mission, vision of the organization, what the world's going to look like if the mission's achieved, and line of sight clarity at the individual contributor level as to what their role, responsibility is in terms of goal accomplishment, so that when they ring the bell of success, that individual contributor knows exactly what they did to make that happen.
Brilliant. Yeah. Let's get aligning and kick off our chat in part one to tell us about your thinking of the situation in businesses in this present altered world. We're not going back. We're into a new normal, if that's the expression. We call it altered world. Are many businesses, their leaders, their people out of alignment? How can that out of alignment be recognized? And what's the consequences of not being aligned? And what do you think may be causing out of alignment? Sorry for so many questions, but you can tell I'm excited.
Well, I appreciate that. So, misalignment comes in many different forms. We see it constantly. People that disconnect from the mission vision, like we talked about, people that aren't clear on what their role and the expectation of the organization and what they have on them, and the way that they're asked to interact with their peers. So now in this COVID environment, which is upon us and may have changed how we conduct our organizations forever going forward, we have to be more intentional about our communication. So let's use that as an example. So if you think about a town hall meeting where the leader is able to bring in their the entire employee base, or maybe the leadership group or whatever, and have discussion. Now, if a person has to use the bathroom, they actually have to get up and go someplace and do something. They can't turn off their Zoom and be doing anything, right? Yeah. Answering phone calls, text messaging, cleaning out their inbox, whatever. Those things can't happen in a real environment, but in the virtual environment, it can. So the fact that that's the case, leaders have to be much more intentional about how they connect with employees, keep employees engaged, stay current on what's going on in their lives. It has to be extremely purposeful work. And that speaks to this concept of alignment. The lack of that allows people to get more disenfranchised, disconnected from the organization and or its leadership. And ultimately, all it does is beget more misalignment.
Yeah.
And you can quickly see what the outcomes of that are. We start seeing some pretty egregious things.
Yeah. Can I ask then, are you suggesting that leaders today need some additional skills, like more ability to do things like you and I are doing on Zoom, better communications, just being able to engage virtually, understand remote leadership?
Absolutely. Taking the time to understand where the other person is coming from, having that dialogue, giving yourself adequate breaks so that people can disconnect, do the things that they need to do, whether it's a biological break or whatnot. Sometimes it's just mental clarity break, and then come back to it and begin to contemplate what it is that we're trying to accomplish as an organization. But that has to be very purposeful. And the other thing that we talk about is this in communication specifically. Chapter 7 really gets at that. is we're specifically after not just the bidirectional communication expected top to bottom, but it's that lateral communication as well between teammates, peers, so on and so forth. And are we really fostering an environment by which people can communicate effectively? Zoom is helpful, but there are some challenges associated with it as well.
Fascinating. Art, before we move to part two, I'd just like to remind viewers and listeners of your website URL, which is orgametrics.net. Now, let me read that out for listeners. ORGAMETRICS, orgametrics.net. And obviously, viewers, you can see it, and you can see I'm holding this great book in my hand, and it's published by Made for Success Publishing. Art, time for part two, and time to get working on alignment and knowing what we need to do. So give us a flavor of your 9 pillars of alignment. I know we can't go through all 9, but can I ask you to possibly get a few of them across to us, and how do we manage to get all the ages and types of persons working cohesively? Millennials can be a challenge, can't they?
Big time. So let's start with one of the pillars, leadership. And I know that's near and dear to you, Malcolm. So when we think about leaders specifically, what we're looking for are leaders that ask more questions than answer. So the tendency of a leader is you got to that top spot because maybe you were the smartest person in the room or you were able to answer questions quickly. But unfortunately, by answering questions, what it does is it stifles creativity. Because, when somebody comes, let's just use an example, comes in and says, "Hey, Malcolm, what do you think about this?" Well, the minute you answer that question, whatever possibilities that might have been in that individual's mind are gone because the leader has now told them what they think. And now they go forth and multiply. Now, the challenge associated with that is we also lose the ability to drive empowerment. Yeah. Because again, you come to me with a question, I've answered it. Instead of answering the question, what we're encouraging leaders to do is to ask better questions. So, for instance, they come and ask a question, "Hey, Art, can I do this?" And I say, "Well, what are your options?" And they list out their options. Well, which of the 3 do you like the best? What's keeping you from moving forward with that option that you like the best? Is there anything that I can do to get the rocks out of the road for you, so on and so forth? Yeah. So part of this is not just answering questions, but asking better ones to drive accountability, to improve empowerment, and to also improve creativity. And I learned that from my father. He was a master at that. So.
Right. Yeah. I saw that, read that in the front part of your book as well. Yes. We all did learn something from our fathers somewhere along the line, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. Mine was all to do with integrity and that. I just want to now squeeze a few more things in. I know I'm over the top on this, but I just like competitiveness. I love the American way of competing, by the way. We need to up our competing ability in the UK, especially who's left the EU now, and we've got to stand on our own 2 feet. But can you use alignment, your concept here, to find out if your competitors are out of alignment?
Well, you would have to get data with inside their organization, and they would have to be willing to share that data with you. And
I don't mean going dumpster diving, by the way. I'm not going dumpster.
Well, and for some, it might lead to some recruiting efforts, right? Yeah. Find employees that are disenfranchised. To get a competitive advantage, absolutely. One of our largest customers, one of the largest companies in the world, measures organizational alignment on a quarterly basis because they see it as a competitive advantage. Yeah. Part of the exercise there is to figure out where we misalign, what's driving that misalignment, how quickly can we rectify it. And then what we start to see are some wonderful things. We start to see decreases in things like chronic absenteeism in schools. We start to see improved profit. We saw that at Medtronic, significant profit move, 13% year-over-year growth in a flat market as a market leader is a near impossibility, but it was accomplished by virtue of driving alignment. And then even simple things like reducing voluntary turnover. The millennials that you made reference to just a little bit ago, they vote with their feet. If they don't like where they are for many reasons, they'll opt to leave and not necessarily share the reasons why they left. So part of this is figuring out what's driving the disconnect and employing what we call the platinum rule, which is to treat others the way they want to be treated. And so part of the exercise here is ferreting that out, and we begin to find that out through measurement.
Yeah, I think that bit is fascinating, because you can find the chink in differentiation. Otherwise, people start to think, oh, it's about price or his product. It's not. In many cases, it's about the energy that's in a business and the team working together that gives the client comfort, isn't it?
Oh, it completely is. You know, I use this term a lot of times with my team, not to say that we have B players, but you can give me a group of B players, and if I can get them aligned around the common goal of mission and vision, we will outperform a team of A players that's misaligned.
Yeah. Every
single time.
Yeah.
So part of the exercise is how do I make sure that we are in the United States, we use this term, dropping the oars in the water at the same time, which is
yes.
To really drive organizational alignment, to propel the organization faster so that we're not working as hard to get there.
Yeah. I just saw the Oxford-Cambridge boat race there.
So at the University of Minnesota,
Right.
the rowing coach there used this example that if one oar is off by 3/100ths of a second, it's the difference between winning and losing.
Wow.
So that has stuck with me as to having a perfect metaphor for what it is we do.
Just continuing this, looking outside on alignment, the pandemic has thrown up a number of interesting challenges, and one is within the supply chain. And I was just wondering if you can use your thinking to check out the alignment of your suppliers, within your supply chain, or vendors, as you might call it, because if they're not aligned, then the domino effect could occur, couldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So part of this this concept of alignment has this thing called accountability. It's one of the 9 pillars that we should definitely touch on. And Malcolm, specifically what we're looking for is 360-degree accountability. Yeah. So not only am I accountable to my peers, to my boss, to the shareholders, but I'm also accountable to the macro environment folks, the community, my suppliers, so on and so forth. So the degree to which we can all be of one accord, and clearly see line of sight where it is we're trying to go, and the roles and responsibilities that each one plays in that, and holding one another accountable to those things, is the cornerstone of our success.
Yeah.
We create an ecosystem of success and we all win.
Yeah. I noticed, obviously, very much within the book, and the subtitle tells it all, of course, a data-driven approach. Just being a little bit pedantic or just argumentative here, we had a comment by a former prime minister many years ago: statistics and damn lies. How do you make certain that the data you're being given is true and not fabricated?
So these are individuals and their responses related to how they feel about their organization. So to that point, one person might feel one way one day and feel differently the next. These are merely snapshots in time. This is where the data sits today. This is accurate information as we have it. So if there are things that are happening in the organization, whether it's an internal shift in strategy or some macro environment thing like COVID that are impacting, we have to be able to measure its impact on the organization, the degree to which people feel aligned, they feel bought into the mission and vision, they have clarity around what the expectations are. These things have to be monitored going forward so that we can quickly tell, are we moving in the right direction or are we not? But I mean, is there room for error? I mean, there's always room for error, because again, there are humans involved in responding, and many times the mood of the individual can change greatly. But if you have a large enough sample size of data, Malcolm, all that goes away.
Yeah, I'm with you. Thank you for that. Now, before we move to part 3, just let me help remind viewers and listeners. You can see on the screen behind me, viewers, the website to go to for art. But let me again read it out for listeners. And you are going to Orgametrics, orgametrics.net. Please do so. I'm genuinely thoroughly enjoying this book. I'm a slow reader. It's like slow food. No, forget the fast food. This is a slow food to approach. Right, Art, part 3. You know the old expression of don't fix it unless it's broke, which will often mean that businesses adopt inertia. What's the benefits of implementing your alignment thinking and the numbers you can offer? Can you give us some sort of, put some sort of number idea on it? And how important is it to consistently measure and report those benefits to continue the momentum? What's your thoughts here?
So a couple of things. I alluded to the experience that I had at Medtronic, where we were able to grow top line revenue 13% year over year in a flat market. Mm-hmm. Again, when you own 55% market share, that is an extremely difficult thing to do. But if you can get everybody on the same page, believing in a common, or having a common vision with clarity around what is the expectations are, keep track of success and progress along the way, and recognize the work as you go, boy, some interesting things start to happen. You get momentum, you measure again, you figure out where the disconnects are. We get those opportunities to right adjust. When we take those opportunities, we get better. And, just the excitement level goes up, and it's kind of that thing that, repeats after, it's a rinse and repeat exercise. So that's half the battle. The other half the battle that we like to consider in going through this exercise is, how do we fare against others? So normative data is another aspect of this. Where do we fit in a normative data set? And so that we can begin to set more goals of accomplishment, things that we want to do to become more aligned, and then start to look at the outcomes of that work. So it's data driven. We're obviously excited about what the data ultimately means to the organization, so we can see, we have clarity around what it is that we've accomplished, but it's also an opportunity for us to reflect and set new goals as we move forward.
Yeah, I just want to again sneak in something extra, which is towards the rear of the book here, and something you and I had a little chat about before we went live on this, and that's conscious leadership, the conscious agenda, planet, people, and profits. What did you find about it relevant to a company that goes for alignment and includes consciousness?
So what we learned is that there are groups within an organization that feel disenfranchised, and for various reasons. And many organizations go and establish employee resource groups so that they can kind of have a collective voice and an opportunity to share some of the challenges and maybe even pitfalls that they experience within their organization. But that collective voice is many times saying something very similar, that I don't feel included in all the things that are going on within the company, or I feel ostracized in some way. So the degree to which you can get everybody to be included and a part of, and a seat at the dinner table, but also an opportunity to speak and share thoughts and ideas, and ultimately be sharing something with them that they can actually eat. So it becomes an enjoyable experience for everyone. Organizations that take that on and take it very seriously, we see it reflected in diversity, equity, and inclusion work. But the predecessor to that is figuring out where people are disconnecting, what's causing that disconnect. And we have found that specifically in measuring organizational alignment. Yeah. And which has led us into the next sequel, which will be in that space of measuring equity, to which we have started a tool that does specifically that as well.
Brilliant. And I'm going to look forward to chatting to you about that when it's ready. I love Art's of the moment thinking. It's not just of the moment, though, for today's leader. It's getting the business future-proofed and a desirable place to work. And that can be the result of you implementing this book. I trust, like me, you've learned a lot in this interview, and you've now got your own strong call to action. Thank you, Art Johnson, for a great interview.
Malcolm, thank you so much.